and we're gonna season this. Now, if you have got like a kabocha squash, or if you got like a big pumpkin, I would actually recommend, if you have the time, you can even do this overnight, right? Because the longer the salt is there, it's gonna draw out more the tuna, and you add the chickpeas, and you add the garlic and lemon, and you process it, and you're like, this does not look edible. And I could spackle something with it, right? And then you throw it out, and then you just go to the store and you buy our hummus, right, that's fine. But the thing about the tuna is that it's essentially 100% fat, right? So you need to actually, it's like adding water to chocolate. It will look like sludge until the right amount of liquid is in there, and then it will be creamy and magical and beautiful. So what we're gonna do, Chef, do you want to whisk? And I'll just like, I'll just do this thing. Exactly, so we're just gonna add water. Now you can do this in a food processor.
Or with an immersion blender.
With an immersion blender, which is really, really good. You can also just do this by hand.
If you've done any of my classes, I normally do the tuna sauce. I already pre-pour the tuna into the glass measuring cups. They're perfect size for the immersion blenders. And then you add all the ingredients to that. And I mean, in your recipe, there is a specific amount of lemon and garlic.
Yeah.
But really what's important with Israeli cuisine is that it's according to your taste.
Totally.
So if you don't want to add the whole amount, just add part of it. And then once it's nice and creamy, you can taste it and see if you want to add a little bit more seasoning. You can always add more. You can never take some away.
It's really profound.
I mean, I've had, in my classes I'll say, do not add all the lemon juice. Do not add all the salt. Don't add all the garlic. Add part of it and then taste it. And then I'll always have the person that says, it's too sour for me.
Yeah.
There's too much lemon in here. And then you need to doctor it and figure it out. So there's always ways to fix it. You can add a little more tahina. That would be what you would do. Or if you've done it with hummus and it's too watery or too lemony, you can add more garbanzo beans to it. But then you kind of have to add some more of the other ingredients as well and adjust it for the texture.
Yeah, the thing is, this is not, everybody makes mistakes cooking. As a professional chef, I ruin things every single day. I make horrible mistakes all day long, and you just have to be comfortable doing it. We really tried with this book to give you as much leeway as possible, right? Again, this is like, the Zahav book was like, what, you know, we did that was Israeli cuisine through the lens of an Israeli restaurant in Philadelphia, and then many years later, many kids later, maybe more responsibility, we had to write a book that was like real. You know,
yeah, the people can actually do the recipes at home.
And the reality is we all make mistakes, so just go with it, okay? Just adjust.
All right, that looks amazing and creamy and...
Wow, you're gonna just see how high I get that before I make a mess. So what's beautiful about this is you've got not only a base for hummus, not only a sauce for the baba that we're gonna be making, but add an avocado and dill to this and you have a vegan green goddess dressing, right? If you're roasting some lamb chops, throw in some pistachio and mint, you have something magical. If you wanna add a little bit of like cucumber and dill and red onion, you actually have like a vegan tzatziki as well. So this sauce is the fuel for our restaurants and for our cuisine, and it is like creamy and delicious and works for basically. We have a vegan, we have Caesar salad dressing recipe in the book that is based on this tuna.
Yeah.
So
look, it's been in the oven for 90 minutes.
Really good job.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, amazing.
I'll see up on the screen.
Look at that.
Yeah, the scoring.
Gosh, I mean, you know, so I gotta tell you, I mean, this is really, really beautiful. And we're gonna take this apart. We have pulp, but the reality is, if you wanted a vegan entree, you could take this, heat this up, and just glaze it with the tuna, and you've got like a steak of like butternut squash. Like this is just so good. So, and this is done just with an oven broiler, no special trick.
No, it's
right?
even this is just roasted.
Amazing.
No broiler. And some ovens you'll see there is. I know you talked about it before. There's roast and then there is convection roast on some ovens. So whenever you have convection, use convection.
Yeah.
That's so basically it just circulates the air in the oven, and so it helps even out the temperature around the whole oven. I would still rotate it, but it's definitely better. It'll heat throughout the oven. I would definitely recommend using convection whenever you can.
All right, beautiful. So this just scoops right out. And listen, if you don't have squash or you don't have pumpkin, sweet potato would work just great with this. I think this would be really good. You can also slow roast carrots and make a carrot baba, which is awesome. Which is really, really good. I love carrots. But I feel like we did a lot of like recipes in this book that were like, what do you have left over from your CSA that nobody likes? And let's figure out a way to like cook that so it doesn't just sit around. All right? Squash. And you all are lucky because Southern California has the best produce maybe in the world, you know?
Israel does have great produce.
Israel does. Again, we really want to impress your friends. All right. Anyone have questions? So quiet. Yes.
So the question there is, when using a convection function on the oven, do you keep the temperature the same or do you change it? I'll give my answer, you can give yours afterwards. I would, if it's roasting, I would definitely leave it, because for roasting, the higher the better. If it's baking, I would lower it by 20 to 25 degrees.
Exactly. I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say 26 degrees. Yeah, that's it. What's nice about convection is it circulates, but you do, especially with things like custards and certain doughs as well.
Yeah.
It'll cook a little bit faster. All right, so look, we're going to do a little swooshy here. Okay. Just so good.
Make a little
well.
Well in the
Then
middle.
you know what, Chef? What we'll do is
Here, you can. This
Oh, yeah.
is going to be
Beautiful.
easier to.
Yeah, so we'll do a little dip.
And you'll see consistency of your tuna and hummus will change a little bit as it sits. It'll be runnier right after you make it, and then it'll set a little bit as it sits.
Yeah. Okay, so we have that nice little
Perfect.
well, and then we're going to do a little of these seeds. You know, we actually do this at the house a lot with leftover sort of jack-o'-lanterns. We'll take the seeds out with the kids, boil them, salt them, roast them. And it's funny because my dad, who's Israeli, was here this year for Halloween, and he grew up like eating only sunflower seeds. So like that was his diet.
I mean,
you know?
that's what Israelis eat.
Exactly.
Sunflower seeds
And
everywhere.
So we went bananas on these seeds, and the kids really loved it. But what's cool is that you can actually take your leftover pumpkin, roast it, make baba ganoush, and use the seeds to kind of garnish.
Right, that's amazing.
So nice. And then we've got some beautiful pomegranates, pomegranate seeds, and we're just going to dump that on top because why not? We've got something here that is, we haven't really eaten in Israel, but I think all the flavors make a lot of sense. The nuance, the celebration of pumpkin or sweet potato or things that are often overlooked. Wonderful. And
I mean, I love the colors.
it's beautiful.
So, yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I don't know. How did it taste, guys? Good?
If you haven't tasted yet, again, you have that baba ganoush on your table, the blueberry homemade, so you can go ahead and grab a taste if you like. We're gonna go ahead and sit down. Again, if you haven't put in a question yet and you'd like to, you can go ahead and scan that QR code that's on your tables. And we're gonna have a little chat over here.
Chat.
But each time you're reusing the food processor without washing it. So you're using it for the first step, you use it for the next step, you use it for the third step, and
Yes.
you're gradually adding all those ingredients to the mixer, and you haven't washed the blender yet. So
Yes.
that's great.
I think that when you have to like dig around for special equipment and you like put it on the counter, you measure, you do the thing, and then you have to take it apart and spend all this time cleaning it, it discourages you from actually wanting to cook and try things out. And again, you know, taking a Vita Prep apart to clean it isn't the worst thing in the world, but the reality is we all like need to make food pretty quickly sometimes.
Yeah.
And when you are like trying something out, and this happens a lot with baking and pastry, I think people get really intimidated. And at the end, after this whole process, you've made something really special. You've got a mountain full of dishes. I don't want to deal with it, you know? So for this, we really wanted to make things streamlined and cook efficiently.
Right.
So we can clean efficiently.
And make it less intimidating for you to want to cook at home. I
Yes.
think that's really great. So there's one question that's actually related to the demo, and I was going to say something about it, so I'm glad that it's here. I've heard that you should add ice water to the tahina instead of regular temperature water.
Yes.
What's the reason for that? So even here, it was cold water. It's been in the fridge, and if I would have been making it to make it extra cold, I would have added a few ice cubes.
Yes, and definitely in the food processor, that's important. Tahina doesn't want, unless you're going to actually cook it to make halva, tahina does not want heat. It'll seize and get really tight. And so we use ice water, especially in a food processor, because the motor actually warms up the tahina. So the colder the water is, the lighter and fluffier it gets. And that's really the secret to really smooth, fluffy, light hummus as well.
All right.
Yeah, so never hot water with tahina.
No. And if it's just room temperature that you have, it's enough to literally just add a few ice cubes just to chill that water down, and that'll make a difference. All right, so just a few more technical questions. Evan has settings for roasting and baking. What's the difference between these? Can I use either one for the squash?
You can use either one for the squash. I think baking is actually a more gentle heat with less circulation.
Exactly.
So I would go roast, because I think that's kind of what you want is something roasted and caramelized. And I think it'll be a little bit drier.
Yeah, it'll take it longer to get to what you want. I would definitely always, when I'm doing the veggies in the oven, I would use the roast, or it really will just take forever. Unless you're multitasking and you're trying to do other things and you don't want it as hot, you can, but definitely if you're just doing the veggies, I would use roast. All right, so you were here last year. It was very soon after October 7th.
Yes.
We had a lot to talk about that. A lot's happened in Israel. How do you feel you make an impact through your food? What message do you want to convey to your eaters?
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of $1 million question I think that we're all trying to answer. And I'm not sure if I've totally figured it out. I mean, here's the thing. We're all sort of changed after that. And for many, many years, since we've opened Zahav, before that, I had a little brother, David, that was serving the IDF and was killed in action in 2003, which changed my trajectory. I was cooking mostly European food, and I came back from his funeral, and I immediately was like, this isn't correct. And it took a couple of years to kind of get to the point where I was like, okay, we're going to open an Israeli restaurant, And I would say that the sort of reason for doing that has not changed, which is I want to advocate and help explain a place that is misunderstood, and it continues to be. And, I've answered that question before, and I've answered it sort of pre-October 7th, in the last 5 years. And I didn't say, it was still sincere when I said it. It didn't seem as urgent as maybe it does now. So I'm not, I don't have any sort of naive ideas of making challah and then there'll be peace or something like that in Israel. I think that there is a case for diplomacy, or at least opening sort of doors to discussion. But right now, our community it's a very trying time. And there's so much negativity.
Right.
And it's so stressful and so heartbreaking. And it just has been on repeat, right? Every day.
Yeah.
And I just feel like this book is a little bit of joy and a little bit of happiness, or it could be a lot, depending on how much the recipes work for you. But I feel like it's kind of the most Jewish thing in the world, right? And meaning that we know how to grieve, we know how to celebrate, we know how to sit shiva, we know how to cook food, we know how to eat, we know how to talk about food, and this sort of idea of door to door or generation to generation, for me, was so much about food and ceremony around that. To be able to share my ancestry and things that we do in my household for joy, to bring ourselves together as a family or as a community at large, to be able to share that with you. I mean, selfishly, this is the best thing that I could do for myself at this moment, is to try to share this book and these recipes and stories with you all. And I think being with you all is like probably, just being together, I think, is really kind of the most important thing right now. And that's kind of the thing that we have the most control over.
Yeah.
Right? So, I don't know. This is like a really sort of dark statement, but I was like thinking about, especially in Israel, I don't know if anybody's ever been to a shiva in Israel, but it's an event, right? There's like days and days and people and so much food. And I was like, God, the best baked goods, and Israelis eat baked goods like 5 times a day, right? And
that's why we eat healthy in the morning.
We eat chopped salad in the morning, and if you drive really dangerously, your heart rate stays up, so you can eat rogalach throughout the rest of the day. And but I was just like, I just remember, actually, even in my brother's shiva, like eating all these like pastries, and I was just like, it's going to like a wake or something like that in the U.S. means like, having a beer or like bringing flowers. And I feel like Jews bring like dessert and they bring like sweets, and I think it's just a really wonderful thing. I think that we have to be able to celebrate sort of what's important and to show gratitude. And oftentimes our love language is with food, even when things are really, really dark and generally very shitty. I think we have to find joy in what is good.
We're gonna.
First episode, and it was like, this is the most unrelaxing. What's funny is I love
enough of it. So, a question for you, because my experience is in hotels and not necessarily restaurants, and it's in a lot of it in baking and pastry in that world. So I don't know. I've never experienced it. But does it actually portray restaurant kitchen life?
I think that it's the closest portrayal of restaurants. I think it's done probably the best job. It is still theatrical,
right?
But I think it's kind of as close as I've seen, which is why I love horror movies. So to me, after a long shift, watching somebody get their head chainsawed off while drinking chamomile tea is like the way. 5 minutes of The Bear, I was like, absolutely not. But I think it is pretty cool. I was thinking about, and I feel like restaurants are this sort of, this sort of analogy for like what's happening in our society, and we have things like, immigration, gender inequality, like all this stuff, addiction, all this stuff happening in restaurants, and I really want somebody to sort of take apart every aspect of what makes a restaurant whole. And break it up into like different seasons, almost like The Wire, and kind of put it back together. I think that would be really, really fun. But I think The Bear is great. I'm friends with people that have been on the show as well, and I think it's really, really cool. And I think it's also done wonders for Italian beef sandwiches. And now people say behind you all the time in public, right? Like in the grocery store. I was shopping and somebody was like, behind, and I was like, what? Kitchen,
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely, staying behind you, staying sharp as you're walking with a knife.
Yes, chef.
Working at Disney, one of the most important things that I had to get out of my just automatic pilot drivers, when you walk in and out of doors, because you're rushing everywhere you're going and people might be coming in the other direction of the door, you always knock on the door. Our knuckles were always raw because you had to knock 3 times before you would open the door to make sure that no one gets hurt on the other side of it.
Walk-ins too. Walk-in refrigerators, you always knock. Yeah, it's great also because generally you're carrying things.
Right.
So if not done correctly, you open the door and then like
Everything's on the floor.
explodes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
All right,
Does
so
anybody want to work in a restaurant?
all right, so I have a question here that I have to ask, and the question's put here anonymously, but I might need to ask you to stand up. How can I get a reservation at Laser Wolf around the holidays? And I kind of know the answer that you're going to give for this as well.
What's the answer?
You need to text Mark Sessom.
Yeah, that's it. We're going to project Mark's cell phone number and his social security number. Hop on the thing, just call at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Who here wants to go? And also, which Laser Wolf did you want to go to? Okay.
In New York. They don't even let me in Laser Wolf. They don't give me a good table, but... So I think the easiest thing to do is probably just email info@LaserWolf Brooklyn and say that you're really good friends with Mike. If you say Michael, they'll know that it's BS. So you're really good friends with Mike, and then give a range. I'll be in New York for these 3 days, and it would be great. 7 days. Oh, you're good. You can eat there like 1.5 times. Yeah.
All right. So we talked about you having your hummus now at Whole Foods. So how did you decide to work with Whole Foods, and how was the process of getting your hummus sold there?
That is a great, actually, so we partnered with incredible partners, one of which is here. Alec is here, over there in the back. That guy, Alec, made this happen, actually. Right? Yeah. We have friends in Philadelphia that are in co-packing and do really amazing work that we know nothing about. Alec also happens to be Israeli, and we always would talk, like, I don't understand why hummus in the US has to taste like crappy Italian salad dressing, you know? And it's like freezing cold, and there's like it looks like a science project. And I'm like, why not just make hummus the way that we make it? And so the answer is like, because we use really premium trina, we use natural everything. We don't like this idea of adding like canola oil to hummus. It's gross, or citric acid. You don't need it. So our recipe, which I think is very traditional, I mean, our Whole Foods hummus recipe, our Zahav Foods, which is our brand, it's the same exact recipe at Zahav. We add more lemon juice because it gets pasteurized and has a shelf life. It's the same exact recipe. It's trina, chickpeas, salt, garlic, cumin, lemon. Oh my God, you just basically saw us make it over there. And because we use so much trina, it acts actually as a fat or preservative too. So we don't have to add any canola oil, no, Breaking Bad lab making our hummus or any of that. And we think that it is the closest to like real Israeli hummus. So yeah, it's great. You should definitely try it out. And if the reservations at Laser Wolf Brooklyn don't work, just go to the Whole Foods down the street. It'll be awesome. So yeah, Zahav Foods hummus is out in stores. I think it is now here. Right, Alec? Thumbs up? Okay, it took a while. We finally got it to the West Coast, so it's now here in stores.
So
I hope you enjoy it.
Now that we can get the hummus here,
Yeah.
do you have any plans of opening a restaurant here?
I don't.
You just opened another restaurant in Miami.
We're opening
Federal Donuts in Vegas.
in Vegas, right? So we're opening a place called the Viv, which is going to be the one hotel in South Beach, and I love it here. Everybody that knows me knows that I talk about this region. I look on I'm looking at like real estate listings all the time. I told my wife years ago, when the kids were like out of high school, we're buying a home in like Encinitas or whatever.
We have people that can help you with real estate.
I love it. I love it here, and I love to serve. And I think the produce here, it is a different country when it comes to like natural ingredients. It is a pain in the ass to run restaurants, and it's really, really hard to do from different locations and travel. So one of these days, I mean, Alec and I always talk about being able to surf and make food here together. So I would like it to happen. I would like it to happen because you really have this is a very special part of the world. And also, if I get to work out here at the JCC, yeah.
I mean, next time, both times that you've been here, it has been a very short visit. So next time you have to come for longer. We have a great pool. We have a great gym.
I saw
we have a sauna.
I saw the spin class outside.
Yeah.
Amazing. We can't do that in Philly. For many reasons, we cannot do that in Philly.
No, outdoors, almost all year long. I think the only time that it's not outdoors is if we have programming that we need outdoors and we move it inside. But we have a new recovery room. We have so many great things here. So you just need to come for longer and use our facilities. All right, next question. I noticed elements of Persian cuisine in Zahav's dishes. Are those flavors Persian inspired, or are they common to both Israeli and Persian cuisine?
That's a great question. There's a huge, I have a half-sister that lives in Hadera. Her husband is from Shiraz. He and his 10 siblings moved, I guess, like right around the revolution, like in the 70s or whatever. And so he grew up, his job was to help his mother make tariq and make rice, basically, which is a very big deal. And he cuts onions the way that you slice a bagel. I've never seen anything like it before. And so there's a huge Persian population in Israel, and Persian cuisine is part of Israeli cuisine. There's just no question to it. And there's an amazing Persian luncheonette in Kfar Saba called Goar, and they have like 5 different kinds of tariq. They do stuffed grape leaves, but they cook them in pomegranate juice entirely. So they're sweet, fantastic. All the stews are amazing. Persian cuisine is next level good. It is a very, very important part of our interpretation of Israeli cuisine.
All right, let's see.
I'm really hungry for grape leaves now.
I know. We had your grape leaves last year. Yeah. That one's from Zahav. All right. Who is a figure in the Jewish culinary world that you admire or are inspired by?
There's so many. I mean, I would say Adina Sussman's one of my best friends, and she and I WhatsApp each other 10 times a day and have been daily. She also, I feel like, might be my therapist at this point too. But Adina is as good as it gets. She's the most generous person I've ever met in my life. Her, I would say particularly since October 7th, this idea that I could just go over and like sleep in her apartment, which is beautiful in the Yemeni quarter in Tel Aviv, and just cook with her for a couple days seems so cathartic, and hopefully I'll get a chance to do it. But yeah, Adina is as good as it gets. Joan Nathan paved the way for all of us. Incredible. She has a new a memoir that just came out. I would highly recommend it. Joan is the real deal. The real deal. She's great.
Going back to the book, what recipe in the book are you most proud of? Or what's your favorite?
I stand behind all the recipes. I think they're really, really good. I was born in Israel, but I grew up in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh. And in Pittsburgh, it's called a Pittsburgh salad. It's got French fries and cheddar cheese on top. And it has like ranch dressing, and it's on top of iceberg lettuce, and that makes it a salad in Pittsburgh. So we do our version of it, and we actually take potatoes and we brine them in shifka pepper juice. You can use like Israeli pickle juice, you can use pepperoni juice, and we brine the potatoes, and then we roast them really hard, and they get really crispy. And we make a labneh, like ranch dressing, with like a little bit of shaved cheese on top of it with the crispy potatoes and on top of iceberg. It is so good, so indulgent. It's more of a salad than you would get in Pittsburgh, so they would be pissed off at me. But I really I love it. I mean, Squirrel Hill is like a shtetl. I grew up thinking that every major American city had people speaking Yiddish in the streets. It was almost Midwestern city where my father, who is Israeli, wore sweatpants, drove a Cadillac, and would read only in English, but still would say, "Close the lights." He wasn't weird in Squirrel Hill, and so I love it there, and the little shout out to Pittsburgh makes me happy.
All right, we have time for a couple more questions. Next one, I have 12 very ripe, perhaps overripe, persimmons in my fridge right now. What to do with them? Anything Israeli inspired come to mind?
Absolutely. What you should do with those persimmons is, instead of making amba with mango, is use the ripe persimmon to make amba, which is mango pickle, which really speaks to the trade between India and Iraq. The Iraqi Jews, Baghdad was at one point almost 50% Jewish. There's like 0 Jews that live in Baghdad now. They mostly immigrated to Israel. They brought with them tabid. Tabid is the Sabbath dish. It's a rice casserole, cooks overnight. Sabich, which is not exactly Iraqi. It's made by Iraqi. It's sort of inspired by Iraqi food, but that's the most Israeli thing ever. The sabich sandwich, which is fried eggplant, hard-boiled egg, amba trina. So they brought amba as well, which is this amazing mango pickle. It has a ton of fenugreek in it, and it's blended and a little bit saucy, different than the mango pickle that you would taste with classical Indian food, which is like a little bit chunkier, right? So what I would do, and we have a recipe for apple amba in Zahav, or you could just Google.
Adina Sussman also has a really good amba recipe.
She uses fish sauce, which is really, really cool too. But persimmon amba with the mustard, with the fenugreek. Think about roast chicken a la esh on the grill with persimmon amba. Woo! That sounds like a recipe. If I open a restaurant here, that would be on the freaking menu. So I would definitely do that. And once you cure it with the spices and cook it, it will actually preserve and stay really nicely in your fridge. You could probably jar it up in mason jars, cover it with olive oil, and give it to some friends here for the holidays. Or just save it for yourself. Or send some to me in Philly. That's what I would do with persimmon.
Okay. If you had to choose one dish that embodies Israel from your book, what would it be?
One dish that embodies Israel. That is a really hard thing. Describing Israeli cuisine is so emotional. We were asked this question very early on, and we sort of made the decision to be kosher style, meaning we don't mix milk and meat, we don't have any treif. And everybody was like, well, why not? Because you don't keep kosher, and because people don't necessarily keep kosher in Israel. Or my family certainly didn't. My dad would find a kibbutz that made bacon and sneak it into the house. My mom never knew, but we knew. And I was like, well, I think that once you start roasting lamb and adding yogurt to it, it's Levantine, or it's Greek, or it's Turkish, or it's Syrian, it could be anything. And to me, it was the smell or the flavor of the lamb fat cooking on the charcoal, and the za'atar, and the trina, the excessive trina. That to me is the terroir of Israel. So I think, actually, we have sofrito. My family is Sephardic, Bulgarian, and sofrito is the OG cholent. It's the OG tafina. It's the original Sabbath stew. And it was what the conversos, it's what everybody hid in medieval Spain, which is amazing. If you made sofrito, actually, if you cooked eggplant in medieval Spain and used olive oil and not pork fat, and used cilantro, you were definitely a Jew. And the reason they know so much about Sephardic food tradition is because of all of the trials, all of the converso trials, all of the Inquisition trials were so heavily documented, and food was the biggest indicator. It's fascinating, crazy, right? So it's funny to me and I'm going off on a tangent here, we think about eggplant and olive oil and cilantro, and those are like really Levantine kind of things, right? And like, I've been probably accused of cultural appropriation by cooking all of those things together. But in medieval Spain, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, if you were caught cooking those things, you were sentenced to death for being Jewish, which I just find to be fascinating. So to keep it real, I would say the sofrito is, to me, the thing. It's really nice because you can cook it really slow. It's really nice because it makes amazing leftovers. And it's really nice because our people have been cooking it forever. So, yeah, so now you gotta make it. And I was saying, it's very, very easy too. I was like, Mark and I both eat cereal over the sink and watch football, and that's how chefs eat. Sofrito over the sink in a bathrobe.
All right, so Thanksgiving is coming up. I don't know if you're hosting, but what are you making? What are you going to be cooking for Thanksgiving?
You know, I have this crazy idea that you should cook like vegetables for Thanksgiving too, and that there's never enough fiber in our Thanksgiving diet. And I'm like, oh, mashed potatoes, turkey, stuffing, like creamed onions. Like, oh my God, could somebody give me like a piece of celery or like a Metamucil martini or something? Yeah, somebody just like pour some flax into my mouth. But so I will braise. We like to make bacalhau, which is this Tunisian stew that is amazing, and you actually char spinach, like for a very, very long time. You like put spinach in a pan with oil, and you almost blacken it, and then you remove it and you throw in beans. And sometimes you can throw in like a shank bone or whatever, and then a lot of turmeric and a lot of cumin. And you stew it, and it gets almost like, it like totally breaks down. It turns vibrant and green. It's so good, and you can put it on like couscous or rice, and even like wild rice, which I like a lot for Thanksgiving. So I would definitely do that. I think it's awesome. It works really well on couscous as well, too. I don't know if you all have been to...
Couscous, you mean Israeli couscous
No,
real couscous?
No.
So when you see in the grocery stores anything that says Israeli couscous, that's a lie. It's not couscous.
Yeah.
It's a kind of like a pasta.
Pasta.
In Israel, it's called titin. Exactly.
Yeah.
Very confusing. Couscous is only if it's really, really thin.
Semolina, right?
Yeah. And I think you can find it in most kosher sections in the grocery store, but just make sure it's not called Israeli couscous. That is not couscous.
Right. So there's an amazing Libyan. There's the entire population, Jewish population of Tripoli, Libya, ended up having to leave, obviously. A lot ended up in Rome, a bunch ended up in Jaffa. There's a restaurant called Weta in Jaffa that makes the best couscous I've ever had in my life. It is so good. It is so good. And one of the stews, you eat it with stew, one of the stews is this bacalhau, this sort of, which is actually Tunisian, but don't tell the owners of this restaurant. And it's just amazing. So I would definitely recommend that. Also, can I share with you guys something? I have this crazy idea. Do you know those Snyder's dried pretzel bits, the honey mustard pretzel bits? They're like the guilty pleasure. They're like the cigarette of snack food. So good. And I was like, you know, if you hydrated those with chicken stock and you sauteed the honey mustard ones, cover them with chicken stock, go do something for 25 minutes, let them hydrate, go do a little Peloton ride, come back, saute celery and onions with butter, add it, get one little stick of butter, one stick of, it's a big stick. It's a lot of goddamn butter, okay? One stick of butter, 2 ribs of celery, 1 onion diced, right? Cook it really, really slow on the butter. Pour one of those things of stock. Try to get like low sodium because of the rest of what you're about to eat. Pour it on top of one of those bags of honey mustard, like pretzel bites. Mix it, add 1 egg, bake it. It is the best stuffing you'll ever have in your life. And I've had my agent call the good people of Snyder's, and they won't return my call. It pisses me off because I really feel like it's the easiest thing to do. Under-seasoned stuffing is terrible, and I would give this a shot, okay? So everybody remember what I said, right? You want to throw a little stage in there too, you could do it. I'm telling you, this makes the best stuffing you've ever had in your life. So if you do it, post, tag me. There should be some hashtag FU Senators. Give Mike a bunch of money, I don't know what, but give it a shot, okay?
All right, I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions. Thank you for joining
This
us
is
again.
fun. I wish there were more. I wish we could do more questions.
Yeah, I know. For those of you that would still like to purchase books, Nicole will be over here, and you'll be able to purchase the books. We're going to open the doors on the right-hand side to the Senior Center for the book signing, if you'd like to still get your book signed. And thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much, Phil. Thank you very much. Come visit us in Philly or New York. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.